able to let them join. So this is the group conversation for release. This is actually the very first ever conversation that we're having for release, because release used to be part of the CI/CD team, and we had our group conversations in that context. So recently we had the verify one. Verify has actually been handed over since that went over to Brendan, who's now the product manager for Verify. And so release is my main focus now. To introduce the team, we're getting bigger and bigger all the time, although a few of these folks are shared across a couple teams. But the release team is responsible for continuous delivery, incremental rollout, release orchestration and governance. Governance would be the compliance things around releases, and the security things that are not part of the secure organization. Feature flags, review apps, and pages, which I think most of us are familiar with. On the team, we've got Alessio in Italy, Andrew, who's new on the front end in Canada, Darby's our new engineering manager on the back end, Dimitri's our UX designer, Felipa has been around for a long time on the team helping out, and she's in Portugal. I'm here in the Netherlands. John is in the US, Nathan is in Canada, Rayana is in the Netherlands here with us, Shinya is in Japan, and Vladimir, who's new on the team, is in Russia. So we're big and we're becoming even more distributed than we ever used to be. What I want to do, though, with my part of this presentation is talk to you a little bit about what we're doing over the next few releases. So there's some really great stuff. It's really been great to dive in to the release roadmap and give a lot more thought, deep thought, than I've been able to when I was covering both Verify and Release. And I think we've come up with some really great stuff. So the 11.8 release, which is the one that we're building now, will have access control for pages, pages support for subgroups. So the access control for pages one, you might think is familiar and that we already released that. We did, so this is just turning it on GitLab.com. But pages support for subgroups is a big one that's been requested for a long time. It's got a ton of upvotes. Very, very excited to be delivering that. That one's actually already done. So it's very, very, well, it's for sure going to make it into the release. Recursively expanding upstream and downstream pipelines is, that's another feature that we're expanding on that we delivered recently. This was the ability to go to the pipeline view and see if this pipeline was triggered by another pipeline, or this pipeline triggers another one in another project. You're able to click on the ends of the pipeline and follow it out to the pipeline that was triggered, or the one that it's triggering. We're adding the ability to turn feature flags on and off per environment. Right now, this is another feature that we released pretty recently. It's you're only able to turn it off globally now, so this will make the feature much more usable. And then in the 11.9 release, we're adding auditing permissions. These are the two things that were really needed in order to get feature flags up into a capable status, which is one of the OKRs for the release team this year. So excited to be delivering those. Then we'll be working with Marin and the delivery team to get us internally using the feature flag feature to some extent. And then run build on merged code before merging. This is sort of the last thing that we need to do before we're able to deliver merge trains. You probably know that we're able to do builds now, or run pipelines that can run in the context of the merge request. So they know what the target branch is, and you can do some things with that. This expands on that to let you run the pipeline on the merged result prior to merging it into the target branch, usually master. So you can be even more confident here that what you're going to merge is going to work. And then you'll see coming up, we've got some more features to expand on that and grow that into actual merge trains. In the 11.10 release, we're adding HTTPS support for pages. This is another hugely popular item. But right now, renewals and managing the HTTPS certificate is a little bit of a pain. And so we're making that nicer and just have a little bit of a parity with some of the other services that you might use for hosting static pages. The next two items are around binary authorization, which is a really interesting feature that's it's a beta part of GKE, although I imagine this feature is going to end up pretty much everywhere. And what it is that you can sign during your build or during your CI kind of build and test pipeline, that various things happen. You have different signatures to attest that these various things happen. So you could have a signature that attests that your security scan ran. You could have a signature that attests that your compliance checks ran, or that your CI YAML was in a certain format or contained certain things. Or you can even do one for a manual sort of approval process. So I could personally have a signature that I use to say this change has my approval. And when you set that up in GKE, you can have GKE in the Kubernetes cluster enforce that for you, which is a really, really cool feature. It sort of builds the compliance right into the workflow very, very naturally. So we're doing a couple of things in that release, and there's also a blog post or something else that will go out then kind of explaining how it all works in the 11.10 release. And then a environment dashboard, which you can see over here on the right, which will give you a view of all of the environments in a project and what's deployed to them and what the status is. This is also, you can see it taking advantage of the deploy boards and will have nice features for Kubernetes users. Then in the 12.0 release, we're going to bring the ability to scope environment variables to core. It just makes sense for it to be there. And whenever we can do these nice stewardship things, I always try to do so. Adding some controls around deleting protected environments. Having an alert for certificate expiration for your pages site. Adding percent rollout to feature flags, which is now taking it beyond kind of the base features that you need to use in a production, starting to do some targeting features in that feature in feature flags. And then one feature that I think is really, really cool, executable runbooks for releases. So you may know or may not that we already have executable runbooks in the product now. You can get it if you're using GKE, and there's a one-click install to get it to get a product called Nurch deployed to your cluster. It works very similar to the Prometheus installation. And what you get is this runbook that looks sort of like this, where you can have Markdown embedded with code, and then you can execute these things. So you can have a check, run it, and see the result right in the runbook. And so we're going to build a MVC product that builds on that to have a release template and allows you to do release planning and execution with this as well. If you've seen our own release planning issues, you know that we sort of do something like this now in the tickets, but of course issues don't have the features to have automation and everything built into them. So this is something really exciting, and would love to get more feedback if anyone wants to check this out. And with that, I will turn it over to Darby for the engineering section.
Cool, thanks, Jason. Hey everyone, just wanted to do kind of a quick slide here on the team, talk about just some things that I kind of see on our roadmap for the future. Quick intro on me. I've been here a few weeks, still kind of ramping up on how everything works at GitLab, but it's been really great so far. I'm especially excited to be working on this team. I've been working at other companies in the past, and all the things that we're talking about here are things I wish I had before at my companies to make them more effective. So it's really cool to be working on this stuff now. Sort of like Jason kind of mentioned, this is a newer team. I put on here Andrew, myself, John, Nathan, and Vladimir have all joined recently. Reach out to them, say hi. They're all looking for some contact with people here and getting to know people. So yeah, and then we're growing quickly too. We're hiring multiple roles for front end and back end. So if you know anyone that is interested in solving these problems, send them our way. We're going to be solving some interesting challenges. I've linked one issue here that Jason kind of touched on earlier, but essentially this is the idea of solving the problem of how do you make CD effective in applications or code bases where you have like high code churn, and that's a big problem for a lot of companies. So I'm excited to get to work on that. And then I put big opportunities in here. I think there's a lot of great stuff we can do. I linked to one of my favorite books that I've read recently, and it talks about how DevOps and CI/CD are a differentiator for companies, and I think it's really true. And being able to work on this stuff is pretty exciting. So yeah, just wanted to kind of introduce myself and say I'm excited to get to work on this stuff. I think from there we can jump into questions.
It looks like we have some questions in chat. So we'll start
maybe I
with
would
those.
jump in. It would be easier. Regarding the signatures and authentication, I've noticed that it's something similar to what we've seen in the past. There's something named Graphias. It's a product developed by Google, or at least open source by Google, and they have something also named Kritis for the checking of signatures and all the binary authorization. Is that what we're using under the hood?
I don't know what GraphAS is built on. We're not using that, but we may be using the same underlying tech. I wouldn't be surprised if Google is involved with this. Google's planning to take binary authorization out of beta in March or April. So I'll do some research on this.
How does it work under the hood? Like you said, binary authorization at Google, and you say, hey, this is, it should be signed, and this is the public key. And then every release we have, and in GitLab releases, we sign with a private key. And then only those get out to the cluster because Google's watching for the signature.
That's right. And there can be multiple of those signatures applied to a single entity. So you can have a few different things attesting to different things applying to one binary. And so Google will reject it at the cluster if it doesn't contain all the expected signatures.
So we're basically not using Graphias or Kritis. We're using just GKE looking for a signature part. And that's great. I think this is This is the smart thing to do. Great. Awesome.
It looks like the meeting slides weren't in the invite, so apologies for that. We'll check that next time. Any other questions?
I love the roadmap. This is great, and this is stuff like any company of over 100 people needs these kind of features. So I think it's really exciting. I had a specific question about the merge trains. It said that it's a hybrid proposal, and one of the inspirations was a note I made, but I don't see how it's different from my proposal. So
it's not hybrid in relation to your proposal. It is your proposal. It's hybrid in relation to the other proposals that were discussed in the ticket. So I can make that a little bit more clear.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Dan, feel free to speak up.
Yeah, thanks. Yes, I'm just wondering with regards to like the operational run books, those are primarily what I've seen code that you can execute within nodes. There's products out there such as like HP operations orchestration that do actual automation of those run books. Is this our answer to that, or are we not looking at that area?
I defer to a certain extent over to Daniel Grusso for that question, because the solving the problem for operations teams in the strict runbook sense was solved by him. I think that the answer to your question is yes, that Nurch was our answer to that and how we're competing in that space. Where I'm focused is taking that and expanding on it a bit to make it more compatible with what release managers might have been doing in Excel previously, which is still super common at many different companies.
Yeah, and I'll chime in there quickly to say that that's right, Dan. So basically, Nurch has this open source library called Rubix, and it makes interacting with things like AWS and Kubernetes real simple. And because it's open source, it kind of aligns very well with us, and that's what we're using for what we're calling executable runbooks. It's still early, and we are working on that, but we picture a future where we would be able to see those things run within the GitLab GUI. So stay tuned.
Cool, thanks.
Any other questions? Could be about anything. Well, then I would direct everyone, if you're interested in participating in the release area more, to check out our direction page. It's linked to from the deck that we were looking at. It's about.gitlab.com/direction/release. We got everything that we're thinking of there, and would love your feedback on it. Yeah, thanks everybody.